Hey guys, welcome to the live stream of Here's What We Know. And I've been excited about having this guy on. Uh, I've known Dave Steele for a long time, and we'll get into how I've known him for a long time. But we were just comparing studios, and he was being very humble about his studio and his studio. Man, your studio is what my studio wants to be when it grows up and finds a successful career.
No, this is it's not that big of the microphone is over here. Hold on here. Hold on. There's the mic. All
Look at
good.
that microphone. Do you see that microphone he had right there? That microphone, this couldn't be a down payment on that microphone. I need a new microphone.
Yeah, you got to get a new microphone. But
I yeah,
these are not that expensive. I got this in 2000. It's a Neumann TLM 103. My wife bought it for me for my birthday. I had some old, terrible Sennheiser or something that was bad. And she bought me this Neumann TLM 103. And back then, it was $1,000. And now, living in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we've got Sweetwater, which is the big audio.
yeah, I've used Sweetwater. Absolutely.
It's right down the street, about
Really?
about 2.5 miles from me. This same microphone, still to this day, $1,000. Hasn't changed in 24 years.
And the reason that I value Dave's advice on that is, and the reason I wanted to have him on, he was scheduled to come on a couple of weeks ago, but because Dave is a voice guy, he's one of those mythical voice guys. But I have to tell you, the reason he had to cancel at the last minute because he's also a volunteer fireman. And I'm like, hey buddy, are we ready to go? And he's like, Gary, I'm literally on my way to a fire. And he goes, I'm so sorry. I said, dude, saving life and property is a lot more important than what you and I are going to be doing.
Yeah, well, so the whole thing about On My Way, I don't get to play anymore. I got promoted to chief.
Congratulations.
No, that's a crappy promotion. As a volunteer, that's terrible because you don't get to do anything fun anymore. You get to do paperwork and scene safety. Oh, scene safety. Come on. You don't get to go run hoses and operate pumping machines and drive the rigs. You got your own little squad car and you tool around like you're really important and you're not.
See, it's still more important than what we were doing. But I have said Dave is a voice guy. Now, in my industry, and he's that voice that you hear. He's that voice that is the voice of your favorite radio station. When they say, playing the power hits, Power 105. That's Dave. I mean, I'm not saying that, but he does stuff like that. He does stuff like TV commercials. He does stuff like the voice of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I mean,
there's a couple of them. There's Yukon Huskies. It was for the University of Minnesota for a long time, the Houston Dynamo. Out there in your neck of the woods, I was the promo voice for the Oakland A's for a long time.
How about that? And I'm just saying that is, at the risk of embarrassing you, my friend, he's kind of a big deal. Now, I know he's not going to say that, but I will. Because
don't let my wife hear you say that. She'll put a stop to that super quick.
But it is amazing that you have found yourself in that niche. And I tell you right now, it's one of those jobs that everybody thinks they can do. No, you can't. You know who can't do it? You're looking at him if you're watching this on YouTube.
And that really surprises me because you've always been, even when I was in high school.
We're going to tell that story, Dave. Don't worry. We're going to tell that story.
You've always been so personal. I just can't believe that you feel like or believe that you can't make that leap. I think you could.
Well, here's the truth. I have empirical evidence. I've never been able to do it. And because I've known voice guys, right? I've known a number of voice guys. I remember the first voice guy I ever met was the legendary Charlie Van Dyke. Right?
Come on.
Now, when you say
he's like the hero.
When you say Charlie Van Dyke to voice guys and radio people, I worked at KIVA in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he was our voice guy. And Charlie Van Dyke has got the biggest, deepest, amazing voice. And it's just, And I met him, and he's this little small man. And you come up and you go, Charlie, how are you? And the other cool thing is you kind of hear it when you talk to him because he's like, hi, Gary, how are you? Right? So you kind of hear it, but he's not being Charlie.
No, it never comes out when we're having a conversation. I mean, if I go through a drive-through to get food, I don't order in voiceover voice. It's just, and if you know anybody that does, that's a ridiculous human being. And
yes, please stop knowing them. You need to stop knowing them if they do that.
Yeah.
I think it's remarkable, and you're right, it never does come out. I mean, doing what I do, I'll have that happen where like I'm doing something and they'll go, are you? Because I'm just talking. I mean, it's what I do for a living. I just talk. But it's a different thing when you are creating an image, which is what you guys do. You create a feeling and an emotional response around a product, whether it's the University of Connecticut, whether it's the Oakland A's, whether it's Taco Bell. You create that emotional response. And that's what I'm saying. It is a very hard skill to learn. And the vast majority of those of us who do radio, because here's my empirical evidence, Dave, the vast majority of us, 95% of us, have never made the transition to what you've done and achieved the success you've had.
Well, there's also a big glut in our industry, right? Because you've got radio guys and it happens every few years. There's a big wash of layoffs in the radio industry, and your favorite on-air guy probably is you've probably, if you're watching this this live stream and you have a favorite radio personality in your market, chances are they've come in and they're going to get fired and leave. And
if they haven't been fired yet, don't worry, it's coming. We just went
through
a bloodbath a week ago, and then it's just really bad.
The saying is, you've not been in radio until you've been fired. But the problem is that it happens so often now, and there's so many radio guys that get popped out, and they land at home and they go, I'm going to do voiceovers for a living, and then they go down to to wherever their little electronic shack is, and they buy a microphone for $29.95, and they plug it into their computer, and then they just start trying to roll out voiceovers, and the quality's not there. The experience isn't there. It's hard to listen to, but there's so much of that. And while, say for instance, if I do a voiceover for somebody for $500, the guy with the $29 microphone is going to come on there and they're going to say, well, I'll do that for $5. And then the entire floor of my industry goes, just collapses. And it's just been like that for the past decade. As a lot of voiceover guys struggle to keep their prices high, well, not high, but respectable. There's a voiceover friend in Canada, Paul Boucher, who's a big narrator. And he told me a long time ago, he said, don't take the easy price cut. Once you do that, you're always the guy that gets the low price. You're never the guy that people just almost can reach. You're the guy that everybody can get and not think about, because there's nothing remarkable about your product. So, you want a BMW or Porsche, or you happy driving your Ford Fusion? And I like Ford, sorry, Ford. But I'm just saying.
Well, but it's true. I mean, people will put the value on it that you put on it.
Exactly right.
The story that we gave away T-shirts at KRTY at the county fair, and we found the vast majority of them in the trash can. Well, then the next year we decided to charge for them. We started charging $10 a T-shirt, and we could not keep them on the shelves because we gave it a value.
There's
and now people
value. You betcha. You betcha.
So I told Dave, I said, I'll only keep you for 10 minutes because he's busy, and as much as he'll try to act like, no, I'm not. Yes, he is.
I got nothing going on. I just have to go out and get my unemployment check here.
But I told you I'd tell you the story of how we met. And the truth of it is when I first started off, I was a hot rockin' night jock at KKMG in Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Magic 99, which ended up being Magic FM.
Right. Brilliant station. Brilliant.
And it was the lineup was crazy. and I did the night show from 7 to midnight. And every now and then we do these PSAs or whatever, public service announcements, because I'm sorry if I use the jargon, but this is just driven into
Right.
us. And when I sit back and talk to a fellow industry vet, you go, oh. And so they said, hey, we've got this high school guy coming in to record a PSA. Could you handle it? And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Piece of cake.
And so this kid comes in, does the recording, and I don't know. Did you stay? Did you watch me do the show, or was it just production?
So to back up even further, I had just moved to Pueblo, where the radio station was located when we had first met. But I had just moved there from Telluride, Colorado. Parents got divorced. Dad's in Denver. Mom moved to Pueblo for a job. I get thrown into what to me is a big city, and the only friend I've got at night is the radio, which is you. Gary, you were that guy. So when it came time for me at high school to do our PSA announcements, there was only one radio station and only one guy I wanted to work with. And we finagled our way into your studio to do that after hours. And yes, I did stay and watch the show. Yeah.
That is
you were the catalyst for everything that propelled me into this.
Now, and I is one of my proudest accomplishments, and I'll tell you this because, as you can imagine, I was in my 20s at the time. I was probably about, I don't know, 23, 24 years old max at that time, and you did this, and of course, I didn't remember.
I was a freshman. I was a freshman in high school.
I didn't remember.
Yep.
Well, about 10 or 15 years ago, when Facebook all this stuff, Dave reached out and said, "Hey, this is Dave Steele, and I just want to thank you." And I'm like, what? And you shared with me that story because I remembered.
I was not Dave Steele back then.
I remember I just walked on air and I came home and my wife's like, she could tell, she's like, "What's up?" And I said, "Honey, let me share this with you." And I told her the story, and this is how brilliant my wife is. She goes, "Most of us don't get to go through life knowing that we made a difference at all. Yeah. And God just gave you the blessing of knowing you made a difference."
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And that's it. And when I started, because I started studying your career, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy. Lord, thank you for letting me have a part in it, because sometimes you wonder, what am I here for? Maybe part of what I was here for was this guy and his family and his daughters and all the tendrils that you've created, because you've done the same thing that I did.
Yeah.
You have, whether you know it or not.
It's been 8 or 10 radio stations throughout my career, and then this voiceover stuff. And I'll get a message every once in a while from some guy that said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And it's always a good feeling. But to back up just a little bit, after we did the PSA and I was able to make some demo tapes for radio, I applied to every radio station in Pueblo, Colorado. And there was like 6 or 7 of them at the time. From the AMs to the FM, I applied to every single one and got turned down by everybody. I would never make it. The tape was horrible. I walked into Magic FM when it moved down to Elizabeth Street down there in Pueblo, right off I-25. I just out of track practice my freshman year. I had my track pants on, my little thing, and walked in there, and I handed the lady at the front desk my tape, and I said, "I'm looking for anything. Doesn't matter. I just want to work in radio." And she gives me the, "Okay, thank you. I'll pass it on." And out in the background was a guy named Lee Reynolds, the program director. And he said, whoa, hold on. I'll take that. And he took it back around the glass, where you can see through the studio, where you're the lobby, and then you can see everything that's going on. And he puts the tape in the player. And I'll never forget. I'm watching the back of his head, and all you see is this. So he comes out and he says, "You obviously don't have any experience on air." And I'm like, "Well, that's a slap in the face. But yeah, no, I've got no experience on air." But they hired me to run Rig D's weekly top 40 and spin the records on Sundays. And Magic FM was the station out of all of them in Pueblo that hired me, if you can believe it. Your old station, my new station. And even to this day, there's people that have worked at that radio station that I've worked with. A guy named Nathan Cruz, who's like a big record label guy now that's worked with, MC Hammer and all the rap artists and top 40 and rock. And now he's a country record label guy. And we still get together to this day when he comes through Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we still have dinner. Wow. It's just a big cycle. I mean, the relationships you build, and everybody in this business has such a dynamic personality that you can get annoyed, but you don't get bored.
I will say before I wrap it up, I've been doing this a long time, and I've been here at KRTY since 1991, right? Yeah. I mean, this is my career is the thing at KRTY, but all of us have that one station that if you had to define yourself as one station, I think it's always been Magic FM for me. I think that's always been that one thing, because that's the one that taught me everything that I ever learned that created the rest of what I did. And I have such a soft spot for that radio station.
I've got two. I've got Magic FM, KKMG, because that was my starting point. That was the nexus for me. But then after I graduated high school, by the time I was a senior, I had worked every day part of Magic, from help to cover morning shows, middays, afternoons. I would ditch school to work at the radio station, and I couldn't get away with it because during the lunch hour, the school played the radio station in the cafeteria, and they'd hear me. And this is before you could voice track or pre-record anything. So if they heard you, they knew you weren't at school. So got in a lot of trouble a lot of times for that. But then my other station, number 2, was when I moved out to Kansas City. I got hired to be an overnight guy at KBEQ Q104 in Kansas City. And that was, jumping from Pueblo to, the 34th largest market in the country.
Big deal.
Interview skills, on-air stuff, constant coaching and critiquing by the program director. His name's Mike Kennedy. He was always fabulous to me. So those are the two big ones for me, and there's been a lot in between, but those two have kind of set the standard.
KBEQ, legendary radio station. All right, my friend, I'm going to let you go, but listen, we've just started this story, and I've got so many more things I want to talk to you about, and we'll talk about narration. We'll talk about how do you create the sound for each individual client. How do you find that thing you're looking for? All that stuff, and we'll do it. We'll do it next year. We'll take Christmas off. Okay. We'll do it next year.
Well, and if people have questions, have them send the questions. I'd love to answer some questions about what I do from people who are curious about how it works.
Y'all, you heard it. Just send me the questions and let me know, and I'll look forward to it. Dave Steele, my friend, you are the best, and again, I'm just so darn proud of you, and I always will be.
Well, I'm thrilled to death that we've stayed in touch for this long. It's been well over half of our given life on this planet that we've crossed paths and continued to embrace each other's careers, and I'm ever so thankful.